Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Happy Friday. How are we all feeling?
I'm feeling good. Feeling good. I'm excited for the second podcast.
I'm always excited. Ned, are you excited?
Beautiful rainy day in Sydney. Couldn't be better.
It's cloudy this morning. We went for a swim this morning. It's very cold, but it's clearing up this afternoon.
It's toughened us all
So
up.
it's going to
big
be a
time.
backyard session for sure. Welcome back, episode 2 of the Future Creator podcast. Today we are discussing, should founders create content? What do we think? Pavan? Should founders create content?
It's interesting. My thought process straight away comes down to like what stage you're at as a founder. And I don't know what level you're thinking as well, but for me, like the early stages, it's like, they have to wear every hand in their business. So I think they should be creating content. But I think as you go further up, the way I perceive it and see it is there's usually two types of people that I see is like the person that's the marketer, like who, is really good at communication, who shares like vision. And then there's a person that's like the operator, like the product person, which, they're a little bit more reserved, a bit more like focused, a little analytical. So for me, as we go further up, I would be thinking about analyzing ourselves and being like, am I that person or am I the product operations person? If you're the marketing person, 100% you should be spending all the time creating content. But I'm curious for you guys, do you see it as like there's these two different variations, or should the operator should also be creating content?
I would start first at industry. If you're B2B or B2C. I think in B2B, probably not. I think B2B for a lot of people, if you're an insurance broker and you're like, okay, I'm as the founder of this business, and I agree the 0 to 1 stage is also really important, but as the founder of this business, B2B proposition, I'm trying to attract people who are interested in insurance. Should I be trying to create lots and lots of content? Now, content's needed in any business, whether that's paid content, organic content, but I think really going after organic as a founder, early days, it's just going to be banging your head against a wall. I almost feel like if prior to the business, you started creating content and had a passion for creating content and wanted to be public facing, you're going to end up in a B2C brand, more than likely. You can have some B2B business, but most of the time it's going to benefit you a lot more if it's B2C because it's going to go to consumers and there's just more consumers rather than business owners, given it's a larger segment on the short form medias.
Yeah, I think it depends what business you're running. I think if you're stepping into the market and it's an untapped space, the focus should be on the product and solving some sort of solution for your customer. And if you can do that well, you're going to be incredibly successful. I think when you start to get into a crowded space where there's a lot of different players that do the same thing, that is where founder-led content can be a differentiator because it adds an element of trust to the brand that people can't see when they're looking surface level just at the product. So to your point, I think early stage would be focusing on the business and the product. I think as you start to expand and you start to get into a crowded space, it can be a good differentiator.
Because I would say early stage of business, if you're like, okay, I need to get 50 customers, that is like my number one priority. And if I take some of the most successful personal brands, let's take Alex Hormozi, when he was in his gym launch days, it wouldn't have made sense for him putting on the 0.5, sleeping in the gym, saying, oh, I'm sleeping in the gym. This is like this, documenting the whole journey. That's not going to attract other gym owners. Granted, maybe if he'd gone, okay, I'm going to start creating like authority dominated content around client acquisition for gym owners, eventually that could have snowballed to a point where he attracted and got to the point where Gym Launch got. But ultimately his business was a word of mouth referrals business. And I think for your first 50 clients, if you're a coach, for example, you should be driving word of mouth. It should be very direct, very personalized. Whereas organic social media is this broad strategy. Whereas like you post into the abyss and you attract people to your page. And then based on that, you start the conversation. I think when you begin to get your first 50 clients, you should be like a sniper. You should be like, hey, I know that person who knows that person who's trying to get in shape. I'm going to try bridge a conversation in there and have a conversation with them. And that's both for like a B2B and B2C. I was launching a supplement brand. I wouldn't be making content on supplements yet. I may be doing some behind the scenes and things like that because I've got the background in content creation, but I would just be thinking, how can I get 50 people just to try my product? I'd be handing the product out. I'd be going in person. Like I'd have this real personal touch point. Now I'm not saying organic's not going to be part of the strategy down the line, but I think the 0 to like 0.1 is so crucial to be spending your time actually getting it in people's hands, whether that's a service or a product.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Would you say because I know you said 50, like, products, customers, but like, let's say it's like service-based business. Would it be like 0 to 3, 0 to 4, 5? Like, how would you kind of see that? Because for me, I 100% agree. When you're getting started, just get the first customer through the door, like referrals, your network, your phone, just get someone in there. But at a certain point, referrals only go so far. So like, especially for service-based, maybe I'm like thinking about in that aspect, but I'd be creating content straight away so that people understand how you solve problems and how you think about it and just understanding who you are. I would say like pretty early on, I would be starting to create content. Like I would say what you mentioned, like 0 to 0.1, 100%. Get your first customers. But I think like 0.1 to even 1, I reckon you should be creating content straight away. I think if Alex Hormozi actually was documenting how he was in the gym and like how he was like building everything, I think that would have been more interesting. Especially, and I always think future term, like long term. If he had those videos now, how hectic would that be in his content now? And I think it's like, yeah, documenting or sharing everything is actually probably more worth it long term as well. It might not see the return then, but I don't know. I'm curious on your guys' thoughts. If Alex Hormozi did that, would you see the downside or more benefit?
100% agree that now it would be beneficial. But I think the point is, why I say should founders be creating content is that creating content is a distraction, or not a distraction, but it's a task that requires time and effort. And that detracts from other core competencies of their business early on. And the question is, would Gym Launch be as successful if Alex Hormozi is thinking in the back of his mind, oh, I've got to put together this like CapCut video instead of doing outbound, instead of doing fulfillment, instead of doing all these things that essentially move the needle forward on his business. And it wasn't like he was exactly like, oh, I've got loads of spare time. Like the guy was falling asleep standing up. So the question is, can someone still be successful validating the idea early stage while thinking in the back of the mind, how can I create content? And I think it's just an interesting dynamic to like lean on, because so many people are looking at content as the shiny object of, oh, I must create content if I'm running a business. And it's just when it comes into play.
Yeah, I think it comes later. I think you have to validate the product first, in my opinion, or you just extend your runway. Like if you're going to now dedicate part of your day to create content, you're going to slow yourself down in other areas of the business. And I think to the Hormozi point is like, we probably wouldn't know Alex Hormozi if he did a lot of those things we're describing. Like he's been so successful probably because he built this empire and then he started talking about it versus talking about it along the way.
Yeah, I think, and he's spoken about it early where he was already an authority and now he's just gaining more and more authority, right? Like even prior to the $100 million money models, he was still an authority and he's documenting that process. No doubt he'll become a billionaire. So cool to have documentation of someone becoming a billionaire self-made, which is pretty insane. Obviously we didn't get the like early story and I wish there was more content then for our own sake. But I do think it's almost like you need those first steps. Unless, and I'll flip the script, you have no idea what business and you're not even a founder yet. And you're just like, I'm entrepreneurial, but I don't know what I want. I don't know what my preneur is yet. In that case, document everything. Document trying, document behind the scenes. Yes, you may extend your runway, but you're going to give yourself such a better opportunity to be able to pivot and move, because once you start getting traction and an audience, it just makes everything else so much easier. And there's no doubt that once you have traction, everything else is so much easier. I mean, look at like Daniel Dalen. Great example with Ecom Flow. He's documented that journey. Yes, does that mean maybe it took him out of some of the things and he maybe had to hire someone internally to be more operations focused, more internal on the business? But given the platform it's built him, I think that's a pretty good trade-off.
100%. What do you think then is the marker for people to start looking more into creating content? Is it when you have enough like income where it's like, okay, I can hire a team? Or how do you, like at what stage should founders, like let's say founders are watching, it's like, how should they be thinking about, okay, I've reached this early stage now, I've like completed everything I need to kind of get the ball rolling, product market fit, all that. When should they be thinking about it? Like what markers, what stages, mental like mindsets, when should they be thinking about creating content then?
Well, I almost think it's like when they're thinking about what is their go-to-market and their marketing strategy. And they just need to know it's an opportunity cost. Either you go and hire someone who's going to be your marketing representative. Ultimately, you're going to have to pay content at some point. You have to pay for market access, right? Like you have to pay for awareness and eyeballs and attention. Either you pay that in time and potentially some money if it's a videographer as well, but your own time of upskilling and becoming a content creator so that you can attract eyeballs yourself. And that's a payment now, which typically is less than the payment you're going to pay over your lifetime to a marketing team or marketing division. Or you go and pay in paid media as well. You got to pay at some point, or you pay an influencer to represent your brand. Like you're going to have to pay full stop. It's just when you pay and how you want to pay as well. I think it's more an internal assessment of the founder and being like, where are my core competencies? If you're someone that's just like, I'm never going to be on camera, and you've like accepted that, and it's not an area that you see in your core competency as an entrepreneur, then I'm like, don't force it. You don't need to be. There's so many great people that run incredibly successful businesses as founders, and they do not need to be in the spotlight. And they thrive outside the spotlight, pulling their strings, and they let other people step into that as well.
That's where I agree. I think there is a clear differentiation of someone who's an operator and thinks, again, more in the operations, product, and actually like focusing on that. But I think that's the interesting thing. I think if you are the person that is the marketing, the vision, at least for me, I just see it as like there is no downside other than maybe, you could say like a bit of time distraction away from like building the product. But to me, like I agree with what you say like all the time. It's like marketing is the first step. Like to get attention is going to get, even if you have, X amount of attention, you're going to still bring more awareness to your product. So it's like you can solve it as you get more customers as well. Like you might hire more team, but if you're that marketing guy and you have that vision and you have, like, again, it comes down to conviction. If you're the person that wants to talk about it and you want to share everything, I would be saying like pretty early on, you should be doing that. At least that's my opinion. Like if Alex Hormozi was like, I would have loved to see a clip, Alex Hormozi being like, I'm going to do this, like, I'm going to become a billionaire and I'm going to show you exactly how I'm going to, like, that would have been so interesting, especially like, now seeing everything like happen. I think that would have been like a distraction in a sense for sure, but I still think it outweighs the distraction, like creating content. I don't know how you guys think about that.
I think it depends on the type of business you're running. I think if you were like a founder-led brand where you are the business, for example, if you are a real estate agent, I think that's a great opportunity to create content because you're quite literally the entry to that product, right? Like, and people are going to probably buy through you. If you are creating mouth tape, right, the product is the business. And for that reason, you should nail the product, build the business, and then the founder can be, for example, Todd Anderson, like that differentiator where it gives you a different look into what that business is and who's behind it. But I think the content strategy depends on the business that you're running and what role the founder should play in that.
I also think, when you have a heavily product-focused business, so like mouth tape, you could say, if you've gone and, you're going to make the best mouth tape on the market and you go and research all the different types of tape there is and like you want the specific type that's got air holes in it so you can breathe through and it doesn't block X, Y, and Z, that then becomes a large part of your unique selling proposition. And so if you have that and you validate that and you're validating product market fit through the actual product, which is a very traditional way of looking at consumer good companies, as opposed to a founder-led brand, which actually takes a lot of the emphasis off the product. And that's why you now see all of these companies competing on brand alone. Because, we can go and we can take a David Beckham and he can go release a testosterone, immunity daily supplement. And it's just like every other one on the shelf. But because David Beckham stands by it, it's a completely different product. So the product market fit is based on whose market does David have in his reach? And then what products can we fit to that? It's a very different way of looking at business. And the mouth tape's a good example. Even looking at First or Nothing, which is a supplement brand, right? It's got creatine, protein, electrolytes, unique blend. They went very product focused. And now, as they go to market, they've spent, years on R&D, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now when they go to market, that's their sort of competitive angle. And they'll get these elite level athletes because they've done so much work on the R&D. Whereas, if I want to launch a supplement, first thing I'd be doing is going and asking my audience, hey, what supplements do you guys take? Next thing I'd probably do is ask the Amplify community because it's a paywalled, tighter circle. So it's an even smaller inner group that have already validated that they consume online and are engaged in the content. Great, understand what they do, present some options to them. So it's like I'm doing my market research to have product market fit to an audience that I already know I can sell back to. So I've already got my direct go-to-market strategy. Now that doesn't help like a wider lens because that's capped at my audience level. So I think it's worth keeping in mind, like if you're going to build like a huge company, you've got to think about like, okay, at some point this warm audience is going to run out from your direct personal brand. And then how do you go outside of that? And I actually think the statement you made around, I'm going to be a billionaire with Alex Hormozi, I'm like, would that derail everything he's doing? Because if he's going, I'm going to be a billionaire, and he adopts that mindset, it's that whole thing of like, well, why am I sleeping in a gym tonight? Like, is this the highest leverage task I could be doing to become a billionaire? And when you use that lens, probably going and service the individual customer and solving that small little problem that day, if you're always going highest leverage, highest leverage, highest leverage, back to the goal of being a billionaire, you may skip some of the incredibly important steps that help him become a millionaire, and then an 8-figure entrepreneur, and then a 9-figure, etc.
I understand that, but when I said that in a maybe not the best way, but I don't think he would be like, 16-year-old or whatever, just be like, I'm going to be a billionaire. Like he could have been doing that, but I do think there would be steps of like, hey, I want to make my, first 50,000. I want to make my first 100,000, then first million a month, like whatever it is. I think there would still be steps, but at least for me, I'm pulling based off like Iman Gadzhi's like, brand. To me, the fact that everyone saw absolutely everything that he documented as a kid, and he didn't say I'm going to be a billionaire when he was a kid. He was like, I'm going to make this, and I'm working on this aspect of my business. I'm trying this. I think the fact that he documented like absolutely everything, there's so much like connection and story built into it that, yeah, I don't know. I think like the amount of opportunities and connections and everything is like came from that deep sort of like connection that he built online. So I feel if you are the person that can speak vision and have conviction, I would be leaning into content like crazy versus product. But maybe I'm like, thinking a little bit differently. But yeah, I just feel like if you're a visionary, I think content is the highest leverage move compared to working on the product. Obviously, I always say this, but it's like, of course, you got to make your product good and you got to spend the time there. But I think if you're a visionary and you're that type of person and you keep spending time on the product, like how far can you take it? That's like my question. Is like, yeah, like how much time do you keep spending on the product and like analyzing that versus like being able to use your strength? Pretty much like, I don't know what you've said as well. It's like, you got to know who you are and like what your strengths are.
I mean, Iman's a unique example because like his products are built around him. Like people are buying him when they buy his products. Obviously, he's created a suite of different offers, but he's kind of a one-on-one. Like he stepped into the space at the right time and like pioneered info, right? I think for most people today, like that wave has come and gone, where like he had a really unique opportunity and he captured on it. I think if you were to step into any market today, I think again it goes back to like your strategy as a founder when it comes to content really depends on the product that you're selling and the audience that you're serving. And I don't think there's like a one size fits all. I think it truly comes down to the business and the customer you're trying to serve. And that will dictate at what point you should lean into content and in what way.
Yeah, I think again, comes back to how much are they buying into the person? Like it wasn't Reid Hoffman and then LinkedIn. It was LinkedIn and then Reid Hoffman.
Right.
I think you need the traction either on the product or on the person. I think the opportunity of content, which is insane, is that we buy into people so fast. And someone can go from little to no knowledge about someone to someone driving high levels of conviction and authority, like Andrew Tate. And you look at that and you go like, wow, like how can this person be so spoken about so fast? Like if that was similar for a product, I don't even know if there is an equivalent of a rise of a product's name in like search ranking at that speed, because we are happy to buy into that individual. But again, he had great footage from the past as well.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. He was essentially documenting and creating content for a very long time. I don't know if you've seen like old clips, but it's like even when they were like, yeah, like not teenagers, yeah, kind of teenagers, like 18, 19, 20, they're like talking about how they're making money and how they like trying to build businesses like.
Well, they went on reality TV.
Yeah, all of that stuff too.
Was it Survivor or one of those?
It was a British TV show.
Yeah. I think they both went on
Big Brother. Was it Big?
Tate.
Yeah, I think Big Brother.
Sorry, Andrew went on Big Brother. Tristan went on some sort of island one. I can't remember.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Some island thing, yeah. But that's why I'm like, it's interesting because at least for me, it would have been like very early on that they seem like the content people, like visionary speaking, communication. So I think that's why they probably excelled in that. Versus, I don't know, like maybe they might be like pretty good with product and stuff and like thinking about operationally. But that's why I think like yeah, he killed it in terms of mass market in terms of content.
I've just seen such a rise of entrepreneurs pushing into the content space. And it just leaves a question for me like, are you owning a department in your business that could be outsourced to someone who's better fit? Or is this the right decision as the founder of the company? I think deep down for a lot of founders, there's a lot of validation that comes from being known online, right?
Yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from. Yeah.
And I do feel people go like, oh, I need to create content to be a representative of my company. Byproduct is I get to accumulate a big following. That's status, kudos among my area of focus. And I want to be known as like that person. Because look at Gary Vee, look at Hormozi, look at all these people. And we mask the justification around leverage and saying, oh, my audience can be leveraged as really just a validation for the founder. And I'm like, could that time be spent more efficiently inside the business? And then we leave the creative marketing for the marketing department, which traditionally is where it sits. But it is crazy because look at the McDonald's CEO is creating content.
Yeah.
Got like 45,000 followers and he does like piece to camera. It's super random.
I was going to say, what type of content is he
It's
creating?
super random.
He'll like eat like a chicken snack wrap, like the newest menu item.
And be like, yeah, I'm with the chicken snack wrap. And like taking a, it's so random.
It is.
And like, you've just got to be like, is that baked into his like,
Yeah.
He would be on what? Like 10, 20 million a year.
100%.
And it's like, is that baked into his contract? You've got to like open up the Snapchat filter and munch down a chicken wrap.
Yeah.
It seems, or it's on his own accord, which for me is that deeper psychological piece of like, why is the CEO of a multi-conglomerate billion-dollar company picking up a phone and speaking to an audience that don't need to know him? McDonald's marketing is cracked. Like they've got the real estate model, they've got the foot traffic. He's not adding more foot traffic into McDonald's. It's like, what's the validation piece there?
Yeah, when you're coming from that perspective, that makes so much sense to me because I think everyone is feeling the urge of like, we should be creating content because everyone else is creating content. And it's like everyone's showing every aspect of the business. So I should be showing every aspect of my business. So I definitely see that as, yeah, I don't think everyone should be feeling like they need to create content.
One of the biggest eye-opening pieces, which is a bit of a plug on Haven's own product that sits within the Amplify suite, is Future Creator. And the whole concept is how do we give founders and entrepreneurs, CEOs, efficiency in their content. And that's when I look at Alex and Leela Hormozi, right? Like Leela actually runs acquisition.com. Hormozi's pretty much head of marketing, but they've created a content engine around them that makes it very sustainable and efficient to not only create content for all the platforms, but do it at a volume that far surpasses most people's even conceptual dreams of what's possible. And they do that by creating a really, really good system. And that's why I like lean into Future Creator a lot, because the automations that are inside that, plus going from long form to short form, I do just think as a founder, you have to find efficiencies in your business. And that is maybe investing a little bit in a videographer, investing in editors, and outsourcing that. I think when I say, should founders create content, I'm like, I don't think they should be in CapCut for hours a day. That's such a low leverage task for them. And I see so many founders dragged into this, and then they're suddenly upskilling at this task that an 18-year-old, 19-year-old who's socially native, really understands the platform, understands CapCut, could put it together in 15 minutes, could be doing, but they're convincing themselves that it's a high leverage task because the outcome of it is high leverage. But I don't think the input of their time is high leverage at all.
Fully agree.
I think what's also interesting is it's a little bit of a balance on like the optics that creates in your business and when is the right time to step in. Like back to the McDonald's example, right? I can imagine someone at an entry to mid-level role who's maybe looking for a pay rise, who's like overworked at the company, is looking up and saying, what are they doing up there? Like why is he
on his chicken wrap?
Yeah, like so the optics of like when a founder steps in or when a CEO steps in to create content and how they do it and how it's perceived by either a startup or a larger organization is, I think, a really interesting one. Because I imagine there's definitely some rumblings across McDonald's headquarters, as with any big brand that's starting to do this.
The most undervalued role in any organization today is the socially native 20-year-old that understands short form like no one else, can create amazing content, understands trends, knows how to shoot content on an iPhone, can put together multiple reels per day and post them across platform. That is such an underutilized role. And I'm seeing that now. It's a really hard role to actually hire for because most of these people are just living native on the platform. And the problem is once they get good and once they get recognition for being good by the platforms and they start posting consistently, they build an audience and all of a sudden they're out of the price range. Because really you want to collect these people up at 60, 70, maybe 80K a year. But the problem is the second they get an audience and brands start paying them $6,000, $10,000, it's like they're out the price range now because they've got a taste of, oh, I can gather attention. And what does that actually get me in terms of return?
Yeah.
We got to find these people. It really is.
Yeah.
But so I was just going to say, but it just from an agency lens, more than ever before, because previously agencies run where you have these like large amount of people around the bottom. I'm talking about specifically marketing agencies. Large amount of people around the bottom running around doing lots and lots of work. And previously the lots and lots of work was like getting the coffees, maybe doing this, like looking after the client, all these things. But now that big band of people, the graduates, are actually the ones that could go and create more impressions than the account executive that's worked in the company for 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Because they really understand native. And it takes 1 or 2 reels to get multiple millions of organic impressions. And that's going to far surpass anything they've got. And you can do it with such a minute budget because they've already got an iPhone. They've probably already got CapCut downloaded. So it's like with next to zero overhead of actual creation and input, they can outperform what's being pushed on paid media, what's being pushed on TVC, what's being filmed with professional cameras. So I think there is this balance swing of, I'd imagine for marketing agencies, it must be one of the most scouted roles out there now. And I would hope anyone who runs a marketing agency is emphasizing the amount of talent and opportunity and skill set that's available within these graduates more than anything else.
Yeah, 100%. I think, yeah, when you're framing it that way of like, should the founder actually be creating the piece of content? Yeah, definitely agree. It's like not the highest leverage because there's other people out there. What is your opinion then on building an internal media team versus having some level of an agency, marketing agency that has these like 20-year-olds? Like, how do you think about that?
Depends on what size business you're running, I think. But I would always favor bringing it in-house because there's much more control. I think anytime you work with an external party, there's just so much inefficiency that comes with that. So if I was to start a business or if I was to make those sorts of decisions, I would find the right people, bring them in-house, and then control the end-to-end experience from ideation to creative to production to execution.
I prefer to have visionaries in-house and execution external. The reason being is you can be very hard on external and you can push them a lot harder and say like, I need this deliverable, or better yet, you can pay per deliverable. And if it doesn't get delivered, they don't get paid. And I think being able to KPI really hard is only possible on executors, very hard with visionaries. Like how good was the vision? How good was the creative direction? So you've got to really believe in those people. And I think great visionaries know how to work and operate executors. And when they work in tandem, it works really well. Obviously, end goal, yes, you'd like everything in-house. I think everyone would. But there is definitely a role for agencies to play in the execution part.
Yeah.
I think from like a operational efficiency, I think outsourcing execution can be great to your point. The only challenge is like that model means that external party is also working on a lot of other different things, which is like, it goes back to that, where is their attention, where is their time being allocated, and are they seeing the same things, or are they seeing the things in the same way that you do? And like we see this with, for example, editors. Like if you were to outsource your clips to an editor, the end product of the exact same set of clips is going to be very different from the way that you see it. So why not have someone in-house that understands you and your process end to end, and their attention is fully focused on that task, so that every time you get it delivered, it's like, you know, exactly it's spot on. It's exactly the way you want it.
But I think that's because you're talking about creative direction, which is visionary role, and execution combined. Whereas if I think about the YouTube, we give the creative direction and it's very much an executional task. And if he's just getting better and better at clipping up YouTube, may that be for me or other people as well, I benefit from that increased skill set. If he learns a new transition, he learns how to blend songs differently, I benefit each time from that. So it depends how good the instructions are. I think agencies, outsource parties, any external work is only as good as the brief.
Yeah, that's why for me it's interesting this whole conversation, because I moved from agency into more of this like creative direction, because I did see that as the gap with a lot of founders, a lot of businesses. What they really needed internal wasn't the execution as much. It was the vision. It was strategy. Because most agencies, when they start, dealing with too many clients, essentially it's like we spend less time on the vision for each business. So that's why having someone internal that's always focused on the vision as a creative director, I think that is the partner that every founder needs, because that person's going to do a lot of the operational lift for the founder. And then it's all about, can you just get executioners for like editing, long form, short form, all of that. But I definitely think, and that's why I've like done what I've done as well, but it really comes down to, you need someone that's a creative director that understands the brand, the person that really cares about it. And that is the person that you want internal, because every other action that you want to execute, I think we could outsource. I truly believe that.
But I imagine both of your perspectives here are coming from an OpEx standpoint of like operational expenditures. If you could get that editor at the same price internally, you would bring them internal. It's because they're cheaper that you outsource them. That's the way I would think. It's like, if you could get your editor and you could bring him in-house at the exact same rate, why wouldn't you not bring him in-house?
I mean, you would, but I think so many decisions can be made like that. I think you have to contextualize it in price.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. But the question was like, would you? I think the only decision to outsource is to obviously save yourself OpEx.
OpEx, yes, but I also think the traditional agency model is this idea of they're working across multiple accounts, which is actually a positive thing. I understand the cons, but the positive is that they get this like overarching view. They learn more, they learn faster because they're getting exposed to different techniques. So ideally, let's say hypothetically, this editor is also working with some of the top people in the space, and we're now getting all of those styles blended in, and we're getting the benefit from the skill and the competency that's being like refined over time.
There's pros and cons for sure.
Yeah, like anything,
Yeah,
bring it
exactly.
in-house.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think back to more focused on the topic, I do think with founders creating content, I just see it as like a real big push at the moment. I think people have to see it as an opportunity cost. What would the opportunity cost? And then if you are going to create the content, how do you build a team around you to do that? Would you see, and I think it's a real challenge to traditional corporations like American Express, where if you said, hey, I think it would get, and I've seen it happen, right? We've had successful students through Amplify in a corporate scenario, financial investment banking, where the head of the investment banking firm, after he was successful, told him to shut down his account because they weren't comfortable with him creating content, being also client facing. Do you think it's a challenge to traditional corporate work environments where the individual employee, one, has something outside of their work to focus on, but also starts to get notoriety and a level of attention that threatens, I guess, the balance between like work and where they place their time? Like, do you think it's a timepiece or more of a threatening to opportunity? Like, why do you think corporate structures are so against it?
I think there's probably a lot of different layers to that. One would be, I think, the perceived allocation of time. And I saw this even when I was in corporate, as there were people that did create content on the side as like a side hustle. And the perception of those people was always, well, they're focused on other things. They're not focused on their role inside this company. They might be sitting at their desk and cutting content or focused on something outside the business. And that leaves a negative perception of that colleague across the organization. So I think there's that piece. I think also with just big box companies, like their perception of the space is still very much in learning mode. Like a lot of the people that make the decisions at an Amex or a McDonald's have been at the company for 20, 30 years. They don't even know how Instagram works. And I saw that in boardrooms of like, people are just very high level on the platform And those are the people making those decisions. So I think there's a little bit of like, they don't fully understand the space. And I think generationally speaking, I think people who sit in that like upper bracket are still warming up to the idea of like what it is and the power that it has, because like they don't understand it. It might have been perceived a certain way 5 or 10 years ago, and they're still warming up to the idea of like, oh, it is actually a business asset. It is not just dancing on camera to TikToks, right? And I think it's a generational thing that people and companies with people in those seats are still adopting.
How do you guys see then for any business, let's say even us, like for everyone in the team to create? How do you guys perceive that, especially with your business?
Yeah, I have an idyllic vision that everyone would create personal brands and we'd all be a contributor to brand awareness and lead flow and acquisition. But I think I'm realizing very fast that that's one, unrealistic. Two, I actually think it's a distraction away from people's core competency. And I think that's probably the biggest highlight for me. For example, when we translated everything into Spanish and we hired a Spanish team, we hired people with personal brands who were on the sales team. But the opportunity cost is these people have personal brands. They already have a side hustle that generates income that takes them away from their job. And the less dependence they have on the company, if you like it or not, makes them sort of a less great employee or contractor because they're just less dependent. And I think that is the fear from a corporation perspective is, hold up, these people were dependent on me to, show up. And all of a sudden, if everyone here had 1 million followers, maybe a pretty empty office, and understandably so, right? Like our whole thing is how do you build freedom through a personal brand? And look at my videographer, traveled all the way through Europe, took him to the top of Kilimanjaro, took him to the Dolomites, took him all over. And we sort of get to around August and he's looking around and going, hey man, like this is awesome. But back when I was in Sydney, I could run this agency. I was sort of making 20, 30,000 a month. Also looking at starting my personal brand and the amount of time and effort I'm putting into yours, I just don't have time. And I remember the first indicator was I saw on Instagram, he posted a piece of content. I said, hey, Jack, if you create those for me, I'd love the same content. I'm happy to pay you per reel for those. And that was when we had the conversation. And no matter what I pay him per reel, it's not the same as one of those reels blowing up, 1 million views, now got 10K followers, now brand reach is out. He can advertise his agency, he may start his own offer, coaching program. No matter how much money I pay him, I can't keep up with that. So I think anyone who's starting to build a brand and realize if you're great at content, if you're putting time and energy into content, it's an opportunity cost against putting it into your own brand. So there's this beautiful balance of how do you find people in that space that are highly motivated to work, but not too ambitious that they're going to go and do their own thing. And I honestly think it's a window because anyone who's highly motivated to work will be successful in their work. Once they see that success, they'll realize they can apply that in their own life. Once they make that decision, that's when they become ambitious.
And I think what's hard, back to like the corporate example, right, is those environments are set up to very much keep you there, right? Because that's when companies have leverage, right? Like the company makes money when they get the right people in the right seats and pay them as low as possible, right? That's why you have caps on pay raises. That's why there's pay grades. And like, if everyone is creating content and creating side hustles outside of their business, they have no leverage to keep people in-house. And even in like my own experience, like it's in your contract as an employee. It's like you can't have stuff outside the business because they want you focused in that seat on the company. And that creates this like interesting trap for people where you almost have to make that decision before you have to decide, am I going to post content or am I not going to post content? I had to make that decision. And it was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I have to actually leave. Not everyone is going to be comfortable making that decision and walking away from something that is stable and safe.
I mean, I was fortunate. I made it on the side. I definitely raised a few flags with my boss, who was also my friend. And it was a bit like, he was on board with it. And I was really fortunate with that. He was on board with that because he saw the potential of building an audience and what that would give us leverage in terms of investment and all those things. But I think he knew deep down, like, hold up, how long are you spending creating content? Like, where's this going to go? There's a lot of questions that get raised, and understandably so. I think any corporation, I can see why they poke around and ask, because you are sort of prying to this. If they're not allocating 100% of their time and resource into the work you're giving them, there must be some level of like unfulfillment.
Yeah.
And some level of searching. So coming back, I think the most interesting example I've seen of this recently was Frank Grief.
Yeah.
Right. So Frank Grief's setting up Kinzo, which is his app, his new startup. He exited a real estate company before, 180 million. Him and his brother now set up Kinzo. In Kinzo, he's really pushed both socials on him, but also for his entire team. And they're all creating social media content. I don't think it's embedded in the contract, but it almost feels like it is. And they all have their own like mini personal brands off the back of this. I think what he's done really well is getting buy-in to the company that everyone there is a shareholder. He spoke to me about how he wants to make on an exit everyone millions, which is really important for him. I think if you can get that level of buy-in into the company, it's like, it doesn't matter because the buy-in's on the exit. Whereas American Express, they're not giving, like they may have some ESOP plans, which Procter & Gamble had ESOP plans, but it's not the same as going into a startup, exiting in the next 4 to 5 years and waiting for that payout. But the personal brand piece was really big for him, and the content creation piece, which I think is really interesting, just as a concept.
Yeah, 100%. I think that, I've seen that too, in terms of it feels like he's really pushed that vision and everyone's bought into that. And I think if you have everyone bought into that vision, I think that's the only way it's going to work. Otherwise, once people start being ambitious and start growing their own thing, they're going to see other variations of what they can do outside of there.
Yeah, great example is my technical co-founder for Roll, Caleb. He's like, oh, I'd love to do like some behind the scenes of like building the app, the software and stuff. In the back of my head, I'm like, of course I'm supportive, but then I'm also like, get the fucking thing done. Like, I'm more thinking about, I want you, if you have time to pick up your phone and shoot the selfie and doing the thing, I'm just thinking like, no, like make Roll better. So it's very hard to have that. And I think unless you allocate, I think you actually have to allocate. And I wonder if in the future of startups, in companies, there will be this expectation that, hey, if you're in the marketing department, 10% of your time goes towards creating content. And that's what we want you to do. And that's like how we're going to compete and be a challenger brand, because we're going to reduce our cost of acquisition. And I think that's a really interesting model to be like, hey, we're all starting a supplement brand. You're early on, this first 8 employees. Everyone in the marketing department needs to be creating content consistently about the brand. But again, they've got to be aligned with the avatar that's actually going to use the brand. But I just think that conceptually is really interesting. And I would say one of the best examples I saw of this was a billionaire who hired this intern. And as part of his internship, he has to create content. And he's been blowing up both the billionaire and the billionaire's brand. I forget, it's like an agency he owns. And, it was creating videos like, oh, this is day one being mentored by this, or this is day one interning with this billionaire. He has the most insane workout routine in the morning. It like runs through his workout routine with them, does all that. And it's that exact example of a 20-year-old socially native intern who's coming in and creating content. And I think putting that for marketing interns and saying, yes, you're going to intern for us. We're going to give you a bunch of jobs. But the most important job is you're going to create a personal brand around the business. I think that's the highest leverage thing you could give to an intern today. I would love an army of interns creating content. And I seriously would consider doing it.
Yeah.
I would take on 10 interns tomorrow and I would make them all create content around what it's like being in this environment and the things they're doing. And I think Aiden's a pretty good example of that. He's starting to color a different perspective of the brand. And I think it really humanizes it through the lens of an 18-year-old who's here from the States, having never been in Australia, surrounded by people that I assume he looks up to. And being able to color it from that perspective, I think is really unique.
Clip it up, send it to him if you want to intern.
Yeah, so for context, the way that Aiden got here is he literally clipped up a conversation I had with Noah where I said, hey, if anyone was willing to like fly out and work for me for free, they could come and work for me, da. Long story short, he sent that to me and I said, all right, bet, let's do it.
I'm curious then for you, because I definitely agree, like having interns and the other people creating content. Do you think that ties back into, should founders create content that gives them, like essentially you have more people creating content around the brand and it gives you a little bit more time to focus on building business? Is that the way you're looking at it?
That's the way I would look at it. And I think the lens of this billionaire, I'll find the clip so we can put it in, but the lens of the billionaire I think is really clever because it's almost like he becomes an authority because you've got this intern like, hey man, what are we doing today? And there's this beautiful dynamic of the mentor to apprentice, and the apprentice is looking up to him, and that's the way the content's shot. So it positions him. It doesn't cheapen his brand. it also doesn't put him in a position where maybe he creates, I don't know, a shit piece of content. And it's like, what is this billionaire doing? Like, why is he messing around on CapCut? So it doesn't cheapen the founder's story or them being the CEO, but it allows a different perspective that humanizes them. For example, it wouldn't make sense for Mark Zuckerberg, and that's why I don't think it makes sense for the McDonald's CEO to be doing it. But like Zuck is very active on social media, but it's very curated. You can tell a PR team are working with him, right? And they've done an amazing job. Zuck, 3-4 years ago, was like a spooky little alien. Like people hated that
They've
guy.
rebranded him. Wow.
They have
He's
rebranded him.
rebranded to just a human now.
Yeah. They were like, let's turn this alien into a humanoid.
He's kind of cool now.
He's cool. He does like Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He's like going to the MMA, da. Like he's really humanized his brand and they've done a great job. But it wouldn't make sense for him to do like day in the lives. It would just be weird. It would be super unnative, particularly if it was all on iPhone and very raw. However, an intern, okay, great example, the Ryan Serhant stuff, where and they put different objects in his hands while he's talking, and he's like in the middle of meetings. It's like that's so clever because it positions him still as this serious, he's there doing business, but it humanizes him because it's like, oh, here's this guy like controlling his temper of this like annoying little intern, but it's a really funny piece of content. Whereas if it was Ryan Serhant doing that to someone else, people would be like, dude, aren't you running like a brokerage and like this is weird.
Yeah, he's brilliant, truly. Like if you're looking at like founders who have nailed it, Ryan Serhant has nailed it. He also encourages everyone at Serhant to post content. Like he's big on the personal brand. You actually, I don't think, can be a broker there if you're not posting content. So he's big into it. Obviously, it feeds his brand, it feeds the business, it feeds the brokers' businesses. But I think it is really interesting of like, as an employee of a company, I would feel more bought into the vision if I was encouraged to create content around that vision. Like, I think I would feel a lot more motivated to show up and help build something if I was feeling more part of it. So I think it's a great angle, no matter if you're just getting off the ground or you are Serhant level real estate agency in New York.
And that's probably how they compete, is a level of personality and personability that other brokerages don't have. Actually, just on that, I loved a piece with him and Hormozi, and he was asking Hormozi, I run the brokerage, we've got our education platform, we've got the technology, and he's like, what would you say to me? Because most people say focus on one thing. He's like, the brokerage doesn't have to make money. It's important to have that on the front end. I just think as an acquisition tool is really interesting. So it's very much a positioning piece for him as well. Even though that's not the lion's share of his income, having that position on the front end is really important because it's the brick and mortar part of his brand of what he's known for.
I think it would be interesting to talk to someone at Serhant on, I guess, like entry, middle management level of what their perception of Serhant is. Because he's very active on social and his content strategy is incredible. But I wonder for someone who's like stepping into the business, how they would perceive him if he's running around with the iPhone and he's like always creating content. It's like, what is that guy doing? I don't know.
Well, same with head of Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I look at that. Mozy?
Alex, wait, no.
We should
Adam
know this.
Mosseri. Adam Mosseri.
Yeah.
Please don't. My account just goes off the platform.
Adam Mosseri, we love you.
Adam Mosseri. I think he does an amazing job of humanizing the brand.
Yeah.
But again, like a little bit in the back of my mind, I'm like, do you actually have a job? Because I'm pretty sure you just meet up with creators and post content all day. And I'm sure he does do stuff day to day. But it's like you become, and that's maybe more of an example of you are now a representation of that brand. And that's really, really important to have you as the representation. And there's probably someone in Instagram that's actually above him, but they take the silent role. So I almost feel like, say we took the American Express example, I feel like there could be a world where your superior stays silent and then they go, hey, we want you to be like the director of Amex and we want you to be like represent small business in America and start creating content around that. I think that's just like a really interesting concept if they were like, hey, for green, gold, and platinum, we're going to create avatars of people within the business and they're going to represent that brand and they're going to speak and be relatable. The green is going to be maybe a lower person who's like, this is why I use the green card. This is why I love it. And they're giving that insight and the behind the scenes. And that's part of the marketing play. I just probably think it's going to be separated from a role in the actual business. And it would be more a marketing agency coming up with these ideas.
Yeah, it would be obviously challenging to execute at a company at scale of 65,000 employees. But I think it would be interesting, even if you took it down to like the consumer level, if you had every employee document this idea of, okay, you wake up, you get your coffee, you pay with the Amex card, you take the subway to work. And it's like you're showing this like documentation through Amex as being the product. Like to me, that would be really cool to watch as someone who doesn't have the card, and I would want the card. But that could be translated across any product, right? Is if you show the employees using that product and tying everything back to the brand, it's just free marketing, right?
I think executed well, if you could get 65,000 employees to do a day in the life, commute, take the card in there, high-fiving each other in the office.
It would be brilliant.
It would be an insane marketing play.
Yeah.
Would you see a difference if they just hired like, I know 65,000, I'm just saying, but influencers that you gave them a certain brief versus in the company? How do you see that as the difference?
Well, I think we're done with influencers. I think we're out influenced. I don't think they have massive influence unless it's in their area of focus. Credit cards, insurance are great examples of when an influencer stands by a credit card. Like even I see some of these travel ones, and that's even like the cooler, more interesting credit cards. And I still look at it, I'm just like, this is such a slop.
I think the challenge with it wouldn't work across any business, any product, because the second you step into financial services, there's just so much like yellow tape and regulation on what you can and cannot say, which impacts what a influencer or even an employee could actually say in their marketing. So it's like you can't say. You can't give an influencer the platinum card and say whatever you want. It's like they have to say something and be like, oh, your purchasing power is like dictated by your credit score and all. Like it's very much regulated, and that's what I think makes a lot of the stuff that you see very stuffy, and it feels like a lawyer is talking at you.
Well, what's funny about that is as a founder or prior to being a founder, let's say my whole thing was Whole Foods, right? With Pure Body. Let's say I sledge every other supplement brand. I'm like, there's no way you're eating this shitty bar. It's got all of these added ingredients. It's got Red 40 or whatever it is. And I start like sledging all these other companies by name. So I can do that as long as I want. I literally can do that and no one can come after me for its express public opinion, right? I could just go. And then tomorrow I can go, what I've created, and then go into that. So it's like you almost bypass all of this yellow tape. Same if I wanted to go and talk about credit cards. I saw Chase Day in the Life. He put one up about how he's got 10 credit cards. It's like, I guarantee if you put that out as a brief, you'd be like, that is financially irresponsible to be telling people to get 10 credit cards. His whole point was if you manage them correctly, But it's like, because there wasn't a financial incentive for him to say that, suddenly that bypasses all the yellow tape.
Correct. Because he's not contracted by any of those credit card companies to speak on those products.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think that goes to show the level of information that can be shared when it's not incentivized in a way, but then it's just finding incentives. Yeah, it gets messy. I think there's like an awesome opportunity for founders who are going to be incredibly vocal in their area of focus and do fit the avatar. So I think it's when you get founder-led businesses, they're often solving problems that they've faced themselves. And I would encourage those founders to step into the light and to start sharing those problems that they've experienced and why they've created the brand. And the more you can do that, the sooner, the better. It's just going to give you an easier leg up in what you're doing.
I guess my question is, why do you think founders are reluctant to post content for those that are? Like, what do you think that bottleneck is?
Founders are typically time poor. I think for the most part, it's an element of time, a skill gap, and then also the opportunity cost. And I think it's super valid.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's definitely just time. But that's why it comes down to, at least like what we've discussed, it's either you have your team or like interns and people building the content, or you input a team in terms of creative director and editor and stuff. But otherwise, I think, yeah, for most people, they just don't want to step into it just because of time. I think that'd be the biggest one. But I feel like even, I don't know. I feel like maybe some people just like they just want privacy. Like they don't want to actually have that status, fame, network and stuff as well. I feel like there's probably a bunch of people that just actually like building businesses and want to stay low key too, which is definitely an area as well.
You almost get probably two different types. You get the founder that wants the attention, and for that reason, they're very comfortable putting out content. And then you get the founder that doesn't, but recognizes the value and the utility of putting it out there. So they kind of like force themselves to do it. And yeah, I feel like people either sit in one of those two camps.
Well, what's your recommendation then, like from everything we talked about? If obviously the one that wants to do it is going to go create content, but the one that doesn't want to do it, how would you guys, I guess, give sort of thoughts and advice? Would you be thinking about the 20-year-old interns creating content around it, or placing a team in terms of creative director, editor? How would you see like those two? Like, which one would you recommend at each stage?
I would say finding people that are spot on the avatar early, and finding influencers that are at like a very low level. I wouldn't even call them an influencer yet. Like up and coming people who are in your space. Let's say you're a supplement brand. It's finding someone at like 4,000 followers who lives and breathes the brand and is in that transition phase of either they're at a job they don't love and they're creating content and clearly want to build that life. And I would go and scoop them up early. Great example of this. Used to be a great girl who used to run at our run club. Content creator, she got to like 10, 15K followers. And then she got scooped up by one of the hydration brands, and she has been instrumental in their organic success. And she used to do some of our run club social media stuff. And she was working in real estate and then changed and clearly was like wanting that. Obviously you have to have your finger on the pulse in the industries that you're operating in, but I'd be looking into those industries and being like, okay, who can become a spokesman for our brand instead of who already is a spokesman, because you're going to pay spokesman prices. If you can catch them on the up and coming and bring them in-house early and say, I will pay you to keep doing what you're doing, but you also need to do it for the company's brand as well. And everything should be cross-posed across the company. I would that. And it's going to be a 20-year-old socially native. I think founders that are forcing to create content around their own journey and trying to make it interesting and cool, and it's not them, I think it's very obvious. And I think that dies slow death of like videographer, editor, tanked views, and it's just like a very slow dwindling death, and then eventually dies.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would actually agree. Like based on everything we talked about, I'm just like imagining like even aspects of like, let's say Alex Hormozi, going back to that. What if there was an intern just documenting like how he was operating? Like that would be interesting because he could just do what he needs to do, but it's like we're just seeing like an insight into like, how he thinks about stuff. Like even if you ask certain questions like, oh, like why are you doing this? And getting like Alex Hormozi insight advice, but through that intern's lens, I think that would have been like super dope. So even to like play that now, I reckon that's going to be really powerful. Have like another angle at seeing the founder-led story.
It's interesting because it really does depend on like, are they adding value or are they taking away, right? And it depends on the personality and their strengths and if they show up in the way that you want them to. Because it's, if you look at again, McDonald's CEO, probably doesn't look that natural in that environment where you're wondering like, is he adding that much value to the brand by doing it? Versus a Todd Anderson, who's quite cool. And it's like, well, that actually is a like mouth tape, which is very boring product. I'm actually tempted to buy that now because I actually quite like him and the ideas he talks about. So it really depends on what they add, I think, to the brand and whether they're adding or taking away. And I feel like for some people, they are actually hurting their own brand by showing up online.
Question that I think rounds this off. Do you think anyone can be successful at content creation? Could be a whole new topic and a whole new pod, but I do want to just round on this in relation to founders. Can any founder become successful at content?
It's interesting because that was like one of the first questions you asked me when we first met as well. And I feel like my answer still stands. I think, and maybe it's a cop-out answer, but is that everyone can, but not everyone will, if that makes sense. Like, I think everyone has the ability to find an angle of how they document, whether it's on a phone, whether it's camera. Like every CEO probably has an angle in how they can create content, but not everyone is willing to show up like that or have a team or like, being able to do that. So I don't know. I would say it's interesting. I would still say yes. I genuinely think everyone has the ability to show up, even if you don't feel like showing. Like, let's make it like super clear. If you don't want to show up, it's probably not going to work because I don't think anything in life happens if you don't truly want it. But if you do want to show up and create content, I think there's an angle. It's just a puzzle that needs to be solved. And I truly think that would be an angle for you to have success.
Yeah. I think everyone can be successful, but you have to do it in a way that is authentic and true to who you are. I think if you show up and you come across as real, authentic, and rooted in who you actually are, I think people can see that across the platform. I think the second that you show up and try to be someone you're not, or play a game that's not suited for you, that's where I think people can recognize that, and that's where I think it falls flat. So everyone has an angle. Everyone's angle is probably slightly differently, and it's about identifying what that angle is, leaning into it, and again, like finding a way, in my opinion, to humanize your brand and deliver trust in some way. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that, but I think if you can do that, more or less, you're going to be successful.
Akin to becoming a great public speaker, everyone can become a great public speaker. Does that mean people are going to listen? I'd say if you become a great public speaker, yes, eventually over time. Content creation is the same. If you can control the inputs and become a great creator, you will get recognized for your work eventually. Some people, it becomes very natural. They can step on stage and roll up, be incredibly articulate, speak to a large crowd. Others, it takes years and years of refinement. Can everyone build a Tony Robbins level public speaking audience or Chris Williamson? Maybe not. But I think there is by far enough audience members that everyone can build a meaningful brand that would benefit their life somehow. And they would benefit from becoming a better creator.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think that's like a great ending. But I want to say this just to, just to kind of round it out as well. With, let's say, the McDonald's here, I know we're like,
Let's keep talking about McDonald's.
Let's talk about him.
Someone's hungry.
But that's why I think if he was on a podcast or, on stage speaking, like he needs to find the format that he can show up authentically. And I think that's the interesting part. Because I 100% agree. It's like the level that you build is I guess going to be dictated on your story. Like there's so many factors to that, and I fully agree. But I think it's all about finding the format. Wouldn't you agree that if, McDonald's CEO maybe just had a podcast where he talked about how he's running the business, like maybe that would be way better than him just eating like the
But
chicken
he's
nuggets.
got 40 to 50K followers. And who knows? They could be now loyal advocates of the brand that are actually driving up average order price, quantity, consistency, all of those things in their purchase behavior. Granted, it's a blip in the ocean for McDonald's, but I think it depends what you're optimizing for. He's built a meaningful audience. 50,000 people in a room is incredible. But I do agree there is a level of format that needs to be adjusted. Personally, if I was the creative director of his brand, I would be making a few changes.
I think that's something
I think the idea of sitting on the 51st floor in a boardroom with a beautiful office suit, tray laid out in front of you, and a snack wrap, something just doesn't feel perfectly aligned there. But again,
If I was his creative director, I would do something really funny. Like I would go down the vein of like exactly as you just described that scene where it's like all high professional film, like coming in, music, and then like the tray slides in and it's the McDonald's wrap. And I think it's the idea of like, even at the top level, we're still eating McDonald's because it's just so delicious. I think that's the connection you want to make with the brand, because you want to go from like big corporation and then you're like, oh, he's just like me. And I think that's actually probably what the brand does really well. You're like middle America and you're looking at the CEO of this billion-dollar company munching down on the same chicken wrap that you go and buy from your local McDonald's. There's a level of humanization there that I think is important. And I think that will connect resonance, even though most of the comments are just flaming him.
it's an interesting one because I don't know if they've nailed it, even though they're trying. I think someone who's done it better is Chipotle with their now he's actually Starbucks CEO. But when he was sitting in charge of Chipotle, they did a lot of that. Like he's a fit guy. He would show up at Chipotle, get lunch every day. And there was definitely like an element of it felt real, and it felt like that's actually what he did. I don't know if McDonald's, based off what I've seen, has nailed that yet, but I know that's what they're trying to push. But I agree, if you can like find a way to creatively show, hey, the head of this trillion-dollar company is also eating this food, you should too, then there's a powerful connect there. But I think they still have some work to do.
But that's a classic. And that's been around since they took C-suite executives, out in remote villages and they take the photo. and
Yeah.
they do that. Like that's
Everything.
been around for so long, right? It's like humanize the brand.
Yeah.
Suit meets remote village. Like they tried that for so long.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's a wrap.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for tuning in. Episode 2 of Future Creator Podcast. It's been a pleasure. We'd love to know if you're a founder creating content or are you not creating content? What's your reason why? Are you scared to get on the platform or do you think it's just a complete waste of your time? Or are you in the process of creating content? Maybe you're struggling, maybe you are winning. We'd love to know and hear from you what your goal is with creating content and how it's going to benefit your business.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Peace.